I'm just going to talk. Oh, there we go. Good morning. Welcome to First Parish Church in Hingham, also known as Old Ship Church. I am Clayton Handelman, a member of our Board of Trustees. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather here as an open community that honors freedom of belief, encourages spiritual growth in ourselves and our children, shares the wisdom of the many religious traditions with reverence for the earth and in service to humanity. We gather on the ancestral land of the Massachusetts and Wampanoag peoples, the original nations of this land, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. We are mindful that for Wampanoag and Massachusetts peoples of every generation, this land is sacred. We welcome you to bring all that you are, your beliefs and traditions, your identity, your story, and the wisdom of your years to this congregation. You are welcome here. If you are visiting or newly attending our service and comfortable doing so, we welcome you to stand and share your name with us so we may offer you a warm welcome. All right, looks like, okay. All are welcome to gather for fellowship hour and conversation in the fellowship hall, which is located at 14 Main Street. To get there, go out these doors down to Main Street, turn right, down the street to the corner, turn right again, and that corner building, the first door you see, is the entrance. Please note in your order of worship this week's schedule of events here at Old Ship. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask one of the greeters who welcomed you as you entered or who will be at the entrance as you exit. Or stop by our welcome table inside the fellowship hall at 14 Main. Are we doing fellowship hour outside? Okay, so the instructions are for the future. We're doing fellowship hour out here today. And so we'll have a welcome table here that you can get things. Okay. Also, any member of our board will be happy to answer your questions. Look for us with the pink colored ribbon on our name tags. Some of us don't have the pink colored ribbon yet, but most people, you could ask somebody and they can point you towards us. We are happy you are with us today. If you are looking for inspiration, comfort, or connection, we hope that you will find it here. As a gentle reminder, please silence your phones. Our morning service will now begin. And Karen Churchill has an announcement.
Morning, everybody. Just a short announcement. The Worship and Music Committee would like to offer everyone here the opportunity to serve the church in your community. Well, you know I have a loud enough voice. I have 16 lines per sheet.
Hopefully we have sound. We do. Thank you very much, Colin. Our call to worship is at 490, one of our favorite poems. You do not have to be good. On your knees to 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Sun, the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the pastures and the deep trees, the mountains and the river. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are headed home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. We now have our introit.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gail Moran Slater, and I was asked to read a poem today to start off the candle lighting ceremony. Thank you. Autumn, New England. Trees still have hopes they'll thrive on their own terms in autumn, New England. Unlike spring, spring pressures trees to enthusiasm, pushing results. Unfair, really, and tactless to coerce trees that way, to gross them out in lushness and life. Where's the discernment? Sad. Anybody can enjoy spring. Autumn is civilized. It knows when to hush up. Autumn unloads trees once blossomed with cotton snow. Autumn's scale is human, believing in process, much like a well-read Unitarian. Autumn loves nuance and shadow. It knows all that is interesting happens in the dark. Nothing much holds up in bright sunlight.
Our opening hymn is number 92, Mysterious Presence, Source of All. Please rise as you're able.
Oh,
now we have a story for all ages. And if anyone feels like a child, you're welcome to come down and sit on the floor. But you can also stay right where you are, because I hope this has a message for all of us. Once there was a little boy named Owen. Owen wanted everything to be perfect, especially himself. From an early age, Owen would go to the mirror to check his appearance before going outdoors, even if he was just going outdoors to play ball. He parted his hairs in the exact middle, but he was always on the lookout for the rogue hairs that would upset that balance. One day his mother asked him, "Owen, why do you care so much about your appearance?" "I just want to let my little light shine, Mom." Well, that was sort of a put down. "Well, you're a handsome guy, Owen, and people look up to you. But do you really think it would matter if your part was an inch on one side or the other?" Owen said, "Of course it would matter. I would die of shame." Owen's mother realized that her son was serious. And this led them to get a spiritual director for the family. Gradually, with the spiritual director fully engaged, Owen was brought to see that his behavior around the issue of his appearance was affecting everyone else in the family, and the unhappiness he felt over the way he looked had been his choice to look at the world through the lens of perfection, a perfection that nobody had all the time anyway. But the biggest reason for the change was that Owen realized he was getting so afraid of making mistakes that he never did anything at all. He would put on his boots but not go outside. He would pick up a book and put it down as soon as he came to the first word he couldn't read. Owen had been a big help to his mother with the baby of the family, reading her bedtime stories. Owen's mom told him, "Sally doesn't care if you mispronounce a word here and there. She just wants to hear her brother's voice." But the biggest problem, Owen, is not that Sally's disappointed. It's that you're going to disappoint yourself if you don't learn to make mistakes and learn from them. Mistakes are what teaches you to do something right. If you never make mistakes, you'd never learn anything. Owen was stunned. For a second, he listened to his mother because he knew that what she said was true. When he made a mistake in anything he did, he didn't yell at himself. He learned to just say, "No, that's not the way this word is read. It sounds this way." And you know what? He noticed the errors he made, but they didn't upset him because each mistake taught him how to do something right. Sharing of joys and concerns with Louise. I'll light.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Louise Smith, a member of the pastoral care team. I invite you to stand and say your name and explain your candle of joy or concern. And please wait for the microphone. Thank you. Oh.
A candle of joy and celebration for my old man over here, Rich Elliott, who turned 73 yesterday. Wahoo.
I'd like to light a candle of, I guess, joy and concern for Ralph Brown, who I understand had successful gallbladder surgery, and I think is coming home today.
Hi, I'm Kathleen, a candle of concern for Don James, who is in the hospital. He's been there since Tuesday. He from undiagnosed diagnosed pain, which hopefully he's getting better. It's very mysterious and thoughts are with him. It's not clear if it's appendix, if it's kidney. It's just not clear. So they're doing tests and CAT scans and MRIs and yeah.
Carol Valentine, a candle of concern and healing thoughts for the granddaughter of a very good friend of mine who just had her 4th heart surgery at Children's Hospital on Thursday. She seems to be doing well.
Nat Stillman, I'd like to pass along the joy I received from so many good wishes for a good year from my Jewish friends at Linden Bonds. Thank you.
A candle of remembrance for an old friend, Jim Talbot, who passed away early, I think, at 71 of melanoma.
A continuing candle of concern for Patty Smith, her husband Roy. They have temporarily relocated to North Carolina to be with family as they try to navigate Roy's illness. And so just holding them in our thoughts. Patty will be joining us on Zoom, but they're away for several weeks, if not months. So sending them some good healing thought would be wonderful. Thank you.
Are there any on Zoom? There are no candles on Zoom. Ooh, sorry.
Yay.
Me again. A candle of joy. I just want to tell you all that 6 members of your board, of which I am one, attended the New England Regional, actually I'm not even sure what it was, but it was 100 people gathering at a Unitarian Universalist church in Lexington for a retreat. And we spent many hours together problem solving and brainstorming ideas to help us figure out a way forward for our church year. And we're going to be having another retreat, just our board locally. And you'll be hearing from us soon. Keep your eyes on the newsletter. Although one of the suggestions that was made from Heather, who's on our board, was to use communications other than email. Is there such a thing? I don't even know. Anyway, it was a good day. And the hurricane did not stop us.
Hi, I'm Susanna Thomas. Just want to light a candle of joy for our daughter Olivia, who just made a courageous relocation to Fort Collins, Colorado. So we're wishing her joy and safety in her new adventures.
Yeah, drove out, yeah.
Clayton Handelman, a candle of joy for a few things. One is it's just fun to help Bonnie get her steps in. Our son, who's studying for a teaching degree, passed all his MTELs, so that's pretty. He's got a little more to go, but it looks like he's going to be a teacher, which is awesome. And then also just a mention of how much fun it is working with Diane Elliott to get the Nurturing Communities Committee working and making this a welcoming place, and really enjoying that service. And we need volunteers if anybody wants to join us. It's a fun committee.
Candle of Joy, the Halden and Tasket Rotary and Cops for Kids with Cancer car show is today. And it's a star-spangled event of over 550 cars, which is the maximum. Another successful car show.
We hold in our hearts those whose candles of joy and concern have not been expressed in words this morning.
Number 650. It's a responsive reading. Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth. It's the key to the door of knowledge. It is a servant of discovery. A belief which may not be questioned binds us to error, for there is incompleteness and imperfection in every belief. Doubt is the touchstone of truth. It is acid which eats away the false. Let no one fear for the truth, that doubt may consume it, for doubt is a testing of belief. The truth stands boldly and unafraid. It is not shaken by the testing. For truth, if it be truth, arises from each testing stronger, more secure. Those that would silent doubt of fear, their houses are built on shifting sands. But those who fear not doubt and know its use are founded on rock. They shall walk in the light of growing knowledge. The work of their hands shall endure. Therefore, let us not fear doubt, but let us rejoice in its help. It is to the wise as a staff to the blind. Doubt is the attendant of truth. We'll have a silent meditation. Whatever you're ready. Happy New Year to everyone. And now it's time to take our offering for the advancement of the ministries of this church.
Good morning. This morning's reading is from Foundations of Faith by Reverend Albert Ziegler. If free will means anything significant, it must mean that somehow, to some degree, man has the ability to act without regard for influences on him, without regard to laws of the universe to which other parts are subject. As such, freedom is an evil too awful to contemplate. If, out of the freedom of his will, man has chosen to do wrong, and reason tells us that he has done and does do wrong, then there is no force in heaven or earth that can move him from it. His case is hopeless. Even the religion which weeps over his plight is powerless to save him. What awful ailment What awful ailment seemed to us to call for such a noxious remedy? The problem of evil, the fact that he does not do as he ought to do, in short, the dilemma of man's imperfection. The whole structure fails when we realize that it provides a solution for a dilemma which does not exist. Imperfection exists, but it is not a dilemma. Orthodoxy supports a completed universe, a perfect, finished creation, and so finds a problem in the existence of imperfection in it. Reason and any healthy faith that illuminates it must know that creation is moving on, not running down, that the universe is in process, that life did not begin in perfection, but in the working out of a perfect purpose, is still moving from chaos into order. What is more natural then than that there is imperfection in the universe and in man? Thank you.
Our sermon hymn, number 128, For All That Is Our Life. Please be seated. Can everyone hear me? Thank you. The reading was from a book, and I need to mention a little bit about that book. It was the last book of Universalist theology written before the merger between the Unitarians and Universalists in 1961. Albert Ziegler was a star Universalist minister in the 50s and came up with this notion of analyzing, going back to Hosea Ballou's theology in the early 19th century and trying to revise it and bring it into the 20th century. So that's where you got those interesting little analyses. Once upon a time, I set out to write my personal credo, the things I hold most dear. And this maxim was first among them. The perfect is the enemy of the good. I live by this, and I think I will die by it. Jacqueline has heard me say it so many times, I think she's going to start imposing a limit on how many times I can use it as we're discussing the major issues in our marriage, like where to stack the everyday china in the kitchen. I want to talk about this on a personal and philosophical level this morning, and then to relate it to what we're doing in this church. One of the churches I served as settled minister in Chatham, on Cape Cod, would not exist today without the pioneering work of an extraordinary man named Peter Fleck. Does that name mean anything to anybody? Okay, a few people. Peter was the St. Paul of Unitarian Universalism on Cape Cod. He went about preaching from Provincetown to Falmouth, spreading the good news about liberal religion, and he left to posterity several books of his sermons and essays, of which this is the title from one, The Blessings of Imperfection. Peter started his essay on perfection with a story his mother used to tell him about a gnome, a little creature who lived under a tree. All his life, this gnome wanted a green hunter's bag. He dreamed about it by night and by day. Then one day he finally got a green hunter's bag as a gift. You would think he would have been ecstatic, but his reaction was, it's nice, but it's not as green as I imagined it. Peter points out how common this reaction is. All of us at times have experienced the sadness or disappointment upon the fulfillment of an ardent wish. The stream was not quite as clear as we had imagined it. The sea was not quite as blue. The mountains not quite as overpowering. The woods not quite as dark. Our marriage not quite as happy. Our children not quite as accomplished, unquote. Perfection would not be such a nasty word if we didn't pursue it, some of us relentlessly. If it just sat there and it's hermetically sealed in its fortress of solitude, we wouldn't have to worry about it. But we take out after it. We have to have it. In our more competitive moods, we measure everything to see if it is up to snuff with our standards of excellence. Let me recall an old friend who did just this whenever we had a dinner date with him. Were we going out to eat Indian food, he had to research the matter to make sure the restaurant we choose is the best anywhere around. And then we have to make sure we get the best item on the menu. Perish the thought that we could have less than the very best dining experience. Are we buying a dress, making a cake, applying for a college, choosing a mate? We don't settle for the merely good. We hold out for the best. It is in our most intimate relations that the quest for perfection is the most destructive. We know in our minds that there is no such thing as the perfect mom, but that doesn't prevent us from feeling bad because we're not her. Some of us have expected our spouses to be the perfect husband or wife and have engendered a lot of unhappiness where if we had been willing to settle for just good, we might have found that our present partner filled that bill handily. Many of us not only seek a perfection of the person we choose to marry, but insist on perfection in the wedding itself. This is one of the reasons why weddings are such stressful times. They're so laden with expectations. When Jacqueline and I got married in 2000, it was her first marriage, and while she knew not to expect perfection from me, she was naturally concerned that things should go well. In the month before the ceremony, however, our landlord decided to turn our home lives into chaos by replacing all the windows in our apartment. And I got Bell's palsy, which left me with a drooping mouth. Yet we had a fine wedding, a good one, though far from a perfect one. My experience with Bell's palsy was like a lot of other people with this viral nerve disease. You go to a doctor convinced you're having a stroke because half your face seems to have melted. And the doctor tells you some good news and some bad news. The good news is you're not having a stroke. The bad news is that you've got Bell's palsy and there's no sure known cure for it. However, most people get most of their muscles back. And so it was with me. In the months after our wedding, most of the muscle tone in my face came back, but I've had to live with a smile that is a little lopsided, and I don't like to look at myself in pictures for that reason. Many people don't notice this imperfection in my appearance, but I do. Sometimes it needs to be said, a form of perfection is possible. There are some areas of human endeavor in which it is possible to perform in such a way that the performance simply cannot be improved upon. When a pitcher pitches a no-hitter in a baseball game, that is by common agreement a perfect baseball game. But that is rare. Most often you will find the term perfect applied to something much more fuzzy like art or the weather. My personal mantra, the perfect is the enemy of the good, actually originates from Voltaire in the 18th century. That philosophical gentleman was one of the fathers of the Enlightenment, from which descends not only science, the Industrial Revolution, and the American Republic, but also Unitarianism and Universalism in America. Voltaire rendered it in French as le mieux est l'ennemi du bien, which would literally be translated as the best is the enemy of the good. But I think perfect is better, fits better. What I want to do this morning, however, is not to prove the truth of this maxim, but to try to grapple with the question, why is it true? And whenever we ask why, we have a choice of several levels we can answer. Many of you would think about this question on a practical level, others on an ethical level, and still others on a psychological level. One of the levels on which Peter Fleck approached it was the evolutionary, and I'm always up for an evolutionary explanation. He has the arresting quote at the beginning of this sermon from a book by Lewis Thomas called The Medusa and the Snail. Quote, "We know a lot about DNA, but if our kind of mind had been confronted with the problem of designing a similar replicating molecule, we'd never have succeeded. We would have made one fatal mistake. Our molecule would have been perfect. The capacity to blunder slightly is the real marvel of DNA. Without this special attribute, we would still be anaerobic bacteria, and there would be no music." Unquote. You know, amoebas are some of the most common organisms on Earth, and they don't have to worry about finding the perfect mate. When they want another amoeba, they just split. But the amoebas you see today are the same as the amoebas from millions of years ago, because without sexual reproduction, there is no evolution. Imperfection, in other words, is built into our DNA, and it is what has made possible spontaneous variation, the key ingredient of evolution. If the DNA molecule did not blunder from time to time, if it always made perfect copies, we would all be clones of the early life forms and would not have evolved as we did. Thus, imperfection is a key component of the natural world and has given us all the riches, physical, mental, cultural, spiritual, that we experience around us. And that is why Peter Fleck called it a blessing. But I want to approach the question this morning on a theological level. The basic nub of what I have to say is this: our ideas about perfection spring from deep templates reflecting religious notions of salvation. In particular, we are influenced by the Orthodox Christian notions of original sin, so that when we pursue perfection, we're actually trying to get back to that Garden of Eden. We may not believe any of the theological superstructure, but it is deeply ingrained in us because of our upbringing in Western culture. There was a time when everything was perfect, and now look at us, we're all degraded. That's the basic essence of what I'm trying to say. The Garden of Eden story is in Genesis, in the Hebrew Bible, but the doctrine of original sin, which was based on that story, is a purely Christian invention. The Jews don't have anything like it. The Garden of Eden story is the second account of creation in Genesis. Peter Fleck in his sermon concentrates on the first account, the 7-day creation story. And he points out that when God completed his labors in each of the days, God saw that it was good. He didn't see that it was perfect. He saw that it was good. But in the second creation account, that is the Garden of Eden story, Adam and Eve are expelled from the garden, and the God tells Eve that childbearing shall be painful, and says to Adam that farming the land will be hard work. The final penalty is that, quote, "In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. You are dust, and to dust you shall return," unquote. So God imposes 4 penalties for eating the apple: out of the garden, painful childbirth for women, hard labor for men, and death. Now, what does Christianity do with this story? Paul, in the 15th chapter of the first letter to Corinthians, lays out the elaborate theory that sees Christ as the new Adam. And as in Adam all die, as say the human race was told that they were mortal, so even in Christ shall all be made alive. Christ, Paul tells us, has stood the Garden of Eden story on its head. Adam and Eve sinned and incurred the punishment of death on the whole human race. And now God gave his son to atone for that, and he will release us from the death penalty and lead us to everlasting life. This is the earliest text from which this basic Christian idea comes. Original sin, in other words, is rooted in an original state of perfection from which humans have fallen away and need to get back to. As Crosby, Stills, and Nash sung about Woodstock, we've got to get back to the garden. This is pervasive in our culture. Universalism, on the other hand, tells us that all of us are saved already. It does away with the idea that Jesus' death atoned for the sins of humanity. Jesus' ministry was to bring people, all people, to the saving love of God. So orthodoxy measures down from an original state of perfection. Universalism measures up from the state of nature. Look at how far we have come since we lived in trees and ate raw meat. Nothing in the universalist picture of the world is perfect except God, and the progress of the race is upwards toward the greater good. If we believe, really believe, that we are all saved already, or to put it into terms today's you speak, that we each have essential worth and dignity, that belief relieves us from the pressure to be perfect. We don't have to get back to the garden. Consider the Japanese aesthetic movement called kintsugi. If you break a teapot, kintsugi says, don't throw it away, make something new from it. In kintsugi, the broken item is repaired with a paste which has golden flakes in it. After the repair, it doesn't look like new. It looks like an extra dimension has been added. It possesses a different sort of beauty. The imperfection, the golden cracks, are what make the new object unique. They are there every time you look at it, and they welcome contemplation of the object's past and the moment of failure that it and its owner has overcome. The art of kintsugi is inextricably linked to the Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi, a worldview centered on the acceptance of transience, imperfection, and the beauty found in simplicity. Wabi-sabi is also an appreciation of both natural objects and the forces of nature that reminds us that nothing stays the same forever. We think the flaw in the broken pot has reduced its value, but the kintsugi transformation reminds us that we can see the change as one for the better, if we so choose. Here's a poem expressing the kintsugi thought called "Do Not Give Me Things Unbroken" by Margot Mariana from an anthology of the same name. The beech tree reigns, its ivy wrap crumpled and bared, torn mid-torso, to let a burned heart, dulled with moss, begin to glimmer, asymmetrical shape shimmer, and fill under the sun's coaching touch the gloss of spring's first day. Stray vines, naked and dangling, wind woven into new designs, hem the roots, limbs still splintered from the heave of frosts and winter's cravings, a stretch to the light, pulled by the thrusts of eager buds, the courting call of the lone crow. Crippled branches resume their reachings. Unannounced the cardinals return, sweeping song into the lazy tangles of apple trees in waiting, sleeping breath, color pulse into the cold, fractured air. Do not give me things unbroken. The blessings of imperfection. In this respect, there's a convergence between Universalist and Buddhist thought. The Buddhists taught that it is a basic delusion of life to think that you are incomplete. We all do it. We all say, I won't really be a person until I have such and such a degree, or until I marry Mr. Right, or until I have laid up enough money for retirement, or until I have a perfect figure, or until my kid gets into the college of her choice. The Buddha says, you are all you need to be, and you already have all you need. You're whole. Orthodox Christianity is all about perfection. For example, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is quoted in the Standard Translation as saying, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. But the Greek word translated as perfect, teleoi, actually means having reached its end or complete. There's a lot of difference between being whole or complete and being perfect. Perfect means that it's the greatest thing that can be imagined. It has no flaws. Whole simply means that you have the sum of what it is, a whole loaf instead of half a loaf. Another villain in the 2,000-year-old plot to make perfectionists unhappy is our old friend Plato. Peter Fleck points this out in his sermon. Plato taught that the ideal is more real than the real. The circle you can imagine and that you can describe mathematically is more real than any circle you can draw on a sheet of paper. Platonic ideas get melded with Christian ideas in the Gospel of John, and 1,000 years later in the thought of Aquinas, and give us the notion of a God who is perfect and unattainable, and humanity is in a constant state of imperfection. So why is the perfect the enemy of the good? Because the whole idea of the perfect sets up in us a recipe for unhappiness, a yearning for something which by definition we can never attain, when we are already, in reality, saved, beloved of God. We are already complete. We are already all we need. So now you know. But the next question is, why is Edmund preaching about this time? I have two purposes in mind. The first is the general purpose of helping all the perfectionists among us, and we're all there at one time or another, take ourselves off the hook. Ease up, lighten up, give yourself a break, cut yourself some slack, forgive yourself, laugh at yourself. You already have won. The second purpose is to encourage us all to think of what expectations we all carry about the future of this church. Are we going to try for perfection, or are we going to work until there comes a day when we look around us and say, as God said in the first creation story, it is good? I once read a fine sermon on expectations of ministers preached by John Nichols, who was once interim minister in Brewster, to a church he was serving as interim while they were in search. At that time, the UUA would set up a website to which ministers and search committees have access, and each side gets to post its own descriptive document, and eventually to see the documents posted by others. John Nichols cruised through the website to see what sort of ministers congregations said they wanted. Here is what he found. Quote, they want everything. They want a great preacher. They want a person of solid intellect, considerable passion, and commensurate speaking ability. But this person must be comfortable speaking to and satisfying a congregation of humanists, pagans, Hindus, Buddhists, and Christians. They want a dedicated and caring pastor who also has solid administrative skills. They want a spiritual guide who will also understand fundraising and help them raise their annual budget, but not by leaning too hard on people who are sensitive about money. They want a team builder who will be able to resolve staff conflicts by getting every staff member to agree and get along nearly all of the time. They want a harmonizer, a builder of community, who is still able to lead in those new directions that will grow the church, but not at the expense of any current member who needs a great deal of the minister's personal attention. They want a social activist who can represent the congregation to the community, but only on those issues around which everyone in the congregation agrees. They want someone who absolutely adores little children and teenagers and retired folks. End quote. It is a characteristic of religious liberals that we do want it all. When confronted by an either or, we instinctively try to convert it into a both and. This is a good and praiseworthy habit, but sometimes it gets us into trouble. Listen again to the wisdom of John Nichols. You will never find a minister who will fit even 50% of that profile. God or nature does not distribute all of these prime ministerial qualities equally to any one individual. The minister who moves smoothly through crowds and loves being constantly with people will probably not be the preacher who will bring fresh, provocative ideas to the congregation. They're just two different personalities. They have different, almost opposite gifts, and those gifts do not reside together as strengths in any one individual. The idea of a complete ministerial package is an illusion. Everything we know about the development of personality reflects that having some qualities as strengths precludes having other qualities as strengths. Good ministers learn to maximize what they do well, compensate for what they do not do as well, and the congregation learns to fill in where the minister alone cannot meet every conceivable need. That's why good ministers are successful. They have the help of the congregation. The bad news is you can't get back to the Garden of Eden because there is and never was any such place. We did not start from a state of perfection, however much your Catholic or Lutheran or Episcopal childhood priest may have tried to convince you. You are not fallen. You are everything you need to be. As a church, you are small, but you are vital and abuzz with enthusiasm. No ministerial candidate will be perfect. Here's a thought I will leave you with. Maybe God herself is not perfect. Maybe she's evolving along with the rest of us. Try that on for size. My friends, each of us has much goodness, and we have room to grow in that goodness. We don't need to worry about perfection. Amen. Our closing hymn was in here a minute ago. Come thou fount of every blessing, number 126.
Mercy
Please join me in extinguishing the chalice with the words in order in 456 in the hymnal. Extinguish this flame by not light all this fire commitment.